The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over Serenity's living room. The house was immaculately decorated, reflecting my sister's taste for perfection. Serenity had invited me over for dinner, excited to introduce me to her fiancé Asher. Little did I know, this dinner would change everything. As I walked into the living room, Serenity's cheerful voice greeted me. She was beaming, her happiness almost contagious. "Ella, come here. I want you to meet someone special," she called out, waving me over. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, my eyes scanning the room until they landed on him. Asher. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. It was him, the man I had spent that unforgettable night with just a few days ago. Asher turned towards me, his eyes locking onto mine. For a moment there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, but he quickly masked it. His face remained calm, composed, as if nothing had happened. "Ella, this is Asher," Serenity said, her voice filled with joy. "Asher, this is my sister Ella." My mouth went dry, and I struggled to find my voice. "Hi," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Asher extended his hand towards me, his expression unreadable. "Nice to meet you, Ella," he said smoothly. I forced a smile and shook his hand, my mind racing. How could this be happening? How could Serenity's fiancé be the man I had been with? "It's nice to meet you too," I said, my hand trembling as I pulled it back quickly. Serenity, completely oblivious to the tension in the room, continued talking excitedly. "I've been dying for you two to meet. Asher's been so busy with work, but we finally managed to get some time together." "Yeah, I've heard a lot about you," Ella, Asher added, his tone polite and friendly. "Serenity talks about you all the time." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and panic. How could I face this man, knowing what had happened between us? "Come on. Let's sit down," Serenity said, leading us to the dining table. "Dinner is almost ready." I followed them, feeling like I was walking through a nightmare. My legs felt like lead, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. As we sat down, Serenity's eyes sparkled with happiness. "I'm so glad we're all together. This means a lot to me." I forced another smile, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Yeah, it's great," I said, my voice strained. Asher sat across from me, his eyes occasionally flicking to mine. Each glance felt like a dagger to my heart. I couldn't believe this was happening. Just days ago we had shared something so intimate, and now he was here, engaged to my sister. "So, Ella, what have you been up to lately?" Asher asked, trying to make small talk. I shrugged, struggling to keep my composure. "Oh, the usual. Work, catching up with friends," I said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. "That sounds nice," Serenity said, oblivious to the turmoil inside me. "Asher and I have been so busy with wedding planning. There's so much to do." "Yeah, it's been pretty hectic," Asher agreed, his eyes meeting mine again for a brief moment. I looked down at my hands, my mind racing. How could I possibly get through this evening? How could I face Asher, knowing what we had done? Dinner was a blur. I barely tasted the food, my thoughts consumed by the shock and horror of the situation. I kept my responses short, trying to avoid eye contact with Asher as much as possible. After what felt like an eternity, Serenity suggested we move to the living room for coffee and dessert. I excused myself, claiming I needed to use the bathroom. Once I was alone, I locked the door and leaned against it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I let them fall, my body shaking with silent sobs. How could this be happening? How could the man I had been with turn out to be my sister's fiancé? The thought was too much to bear, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. After a few minutes, I composed myself and splashed some water on my face. I couldn't let Serenity see me like this. She would ask questions, and I wasn't ready to give her answers. Not yet. I took a deep breath and forced a smile, looking at my reflection in the mirror. You can do this, Ella, I whispered to myself. Just get through tonight. I returned to the living room, where Serenity and Asha were waiting. Serenity handed me a cup of coffee, her smile radiant. Feeling better, she asked, her eyes full of concern. I nodded, taking a sip of the hot liquid. Yeah, just needed a moment. Asha's gaze met mine once more, and for a brief second I saw something in his eyes. Regret? Guilt? I couldn't be sure. But I knew one thing: this was far from over. The drive home felt like an eternity. Every moment of the dinner replayed in my mind, the shock of seeing Asha with Serenity, their shared glances and my own desperate attempts to hold it together. As soon as I stepped through the door of my apartment, I let out a long, shaky breath and sank onto the couch. How could this be happening? I whispered to myself, the words echoing in the empty room. I buried my face in my hands, feeling the tears start to flow. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out, seeing a message from Serenity. Thank you for coming tonight, Ella. It means so much to me. Love you. I stared at the screen, the tears blurring my vision. How could I possibly reply to that? I set the phone down, unable to muster the strength to respond. My heart felt like it was being squeezed, the pain almost too much to bear. The memory of that night with Asha haunted me. It had started as a fun evening at a friend's house party. I had gone there to relax, to escape the stress of work and life. I never expected it to turn into something so complicated. I closed my eyes, the images flashing through my mind. The way Asha had looked at me, the way he had made me feel. It was all so intense, so real. And now it felt like a cruel joke. How could the man who made me feel so alive be the same man engaged to my sister? I reached for my phone again, this time scrolling through my contacts until I found my best friend, Rachel. She always knew how to make me feel better. Hey Rack, you got a minute? I said, my voice shaky. Of course, Ella. What's going on? She replied, concern evident in her tone. I don't even know where to start, I began, taking a deep breath. Remember that guy I told you about? The one from the party. Yeah, the one who seemed too good to be true, she said, a hint of teasing in her voice. Well, it turns out he is too good to be true. He's Serenity's fiancé, I blurted out, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Wait, what? Are you serious? Dead serious. I met him at dinner tonight. Serenity introduced him, and I nearly lost it, I said, my voice cracking. Oh, Ella, I'm so sorry, Rachel said softly. What are you going to do? I don't know. I feel like my world is falling apart. How can I face them? How can I look Serenity in the eye, knowing what happened? I said, the tears flowing freely now. Rachel was silent for a moment. Then she spoke again, her voice firm and reassuring. You need to give yourself time to process this. It's a lot to take in. And when you're ready, you need to talk to Asha. You deserve answers. I know you're right, but I'm so scared, Ratch. What if Serenity hates me? What if I lose her? I whispered, my fear choking me. Serenity loves you, Ella. She'll understand. It might be tough, but you have to trust that your bond is stronger than this, Rachel said gently. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Thanks, Rach. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll get through this, Ella. I promise, Rachel said, her voice filled with warmth and support. Just take it one step at a time. After hanging up, I felt a little better, but the turmoil inside me was still raging. I spent the rest of the night tossing and turning, unable to find any peace. My mind kept returning to Asha, to the way he had looked at me, to the secret we now shared. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed, feeling like a zombie. I had to go to work, but my heart wasn't in it. Every task felt like a monumental effort, and I kept checking my phone, half expecting a message from Asha or Serenity. But there was nothing. At lunch, I retreated to a quiet corner of the park near my office, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. I sat on a bench, staring at the people passing by, feeling disconnected from the world around me. My phone buzzed, and I jumped, my heart racing. It was a message from Asher. "We need to talk. Can we meet tonight?" I stared at the screen, my emotions a chaotic swirl of fear, anger, and something else I couldn't quite identify. After a moment, I typed a reply. "Okay." "Where?" He responded quickly. "There's a coffee shop on Elm Street. 7 p.m. "Fine," I replied, my hands trembling. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I barely registered anything at work, my mind consumed with thoughts of the upcoming meeting. By the time I left the office, my nerves were frayed, and I felt like I was on the verge of a breakdown. I arrived at the coffee shop a few minutes early, my stomach churning with anxiety. Asher was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking just as tense as I felt. I took a deep breath and walked over, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hi," I said, sitting down across from him. "Hi, Ella," he replied, his voice soft. "Thanks for meeting me." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Asher broke the silence. "I don't even know where to start. I had no idea you were Serenity's sister. If I had known—" "It doesn't matter now," I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. "What's done is done. We need to figure out what to do next." Asher nodded, looking down at his hands. "You're right. I want you to know that I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you or Serenity." "I believe you," I said quietly. "But it doesn't change the fact that we have to deal with this. I can't keep this secret forever, Asher. It will tear me apart." "I know," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I don't want to lie to Serenity either. She deserves the truth." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our situation pressing down on us. Finally, I took a deep breath and looked him in the eye. "We need to tell her." "Together," I said, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at my insides. Asher nodded, his expression resolute. "You're right. She needs to hear it from both of us." We agreed to meet Serenity the next day, to tell her everything. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. The truth was going to come out, and there was no turning back. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Tomorrow would be one of the hardest days of my life, but it was a step I had to take. For my sake, for Serenity's, and even for Asher's. As sleep finally claimed me, I whispered a silent prayer for strength, hoping that somehow we would all find a way through this turmoil together. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in my heart. I arrived at Serenity's house early, hoping to find a moment alone with her before Asher arrived. My stomach churned with anxiety, but I knew this was something I had to face head-on. As I walked up the driveway, Serenity burst through the front door, her face glowing with happiness. "Ella, I'm so glad you're here," she exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug. "Hey, Serenity," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "How are you?" "I'm great. Just busy with all the wedding stuff, she said, leading me inside. "Come in, I made us breakfast." The house smelled like fresh coffee and pancakes, and the sight of the beautifully set table made my heart ache. Serenity had gone all out, as she always did. Her excitement was palpable, and it made what I had to do even harder. As we sat down, Serenity started talking a mile a minute about her wedding plans, so I was thinking about the flowers for the ceremony. "Do you think roses are too cliché? I want something elegant but not too overdone." "Roses are classic," I said, forcing a smile. "They'll look beautiful." That's what I thought too. And for the bridesmaids' dresses, I'm thinking a soft lavender. It complements the theme perfectly, she continued, her eyes sparkling. "Sounds lovely," I said, my mind barely registering her words. I was too focused on the looming conversation we needed to have. Serenity noticed my distraction and tilted her head, concern creeping into her eyes. "Ella, are you okay?" You seem a bit off today. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Yeah, just. A lot on my mind, I said, looking down at my plate. Anything you want to talk about, she asked, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. My heart leapt into my throat as Serenity jumped up to answer it. Moments later, Asher walked in, his expression tense but controlled. Morning, Asher. Serenity greeted him with a kiss on the cheek. Ella's already here. Come join us for breakfast. Good morning, Asher said, his eyes meeting mine briefly before he looked away. Thanks for having me. We all sat down, the atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. Serenity, still oblivious to the storm beneath the surface, kept up her cheerful chatter. So, Asher, I was just telling Ella about the wedding plans. Do you think lavender is a good colour for the bridesmaids' dresses? She asked, her eyes shining with excitement. Asher smiled weakly. Yeah, lavender sounds great. Serenity beamed, clearly pleased with his response. I'm so glad you think so. Everything is coming together perfectly. I couldn't take it anymore. The weight of the secret was crushing me, and I knew it was time. I cleared my throat, drawing both of their attention. Serenity, Asher and I. We need to talk to you about something, I said, my voice trembling. Serenity's smile faltered, replaced by a look of confusion. What is it? Is something wrong? I glanced at Asher, who nodded slightly, giving me the courage to continue. It's about Asher and me. There's something you need to know. Serenity's eyes darted between us, a flicker of fear crossing her face. What are you talking about? I took a deep breath, feeling the words stick in my throat. Serenity, a few days ago. Asher and I met at a party. We didn't know who each other was, and we ended up spending the night together. The room fell into a stunned silence. Serenity's face went pale, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. What? Are you serious? This is some kind of joke, right? I shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes. I'm so sorry, Serenity. We had no idea who each other was. I swear, if I had known. Asher spoke up, his voice filled with regret. It's true, Serenity. We didn't know. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. But you needed to know the truth. Serenity stood up, her hands shaking. I can't believe this. How could you? Both of you. How could you do this to me? Serenity, please, I begged, reaching out to her. We didn't mean for this to happen. We were just as shocked as you are. I never wanted to hurt you. Her eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. I need some time. I can't deal with this right now. She turned and fled from the room, leaving Asher and me sitting in the aftermath of the bomb we had just dropped. The silence was deafening, the weight of the truth hanging heavy in the air. I'll give her some space, Asher said quietly, standing up. We both need to give her time to process this. I nodded, feeling utterly drained. Yeah? We owe her that much. Asher left, and I sat alone at the table, my heart breaking for my sister. I had never felt so helpless, so full of regret. All I could do was hope that somehow we could find a way to heal from this, to move forward. But as the hours passed, the sound of Serenity's sobs echoing through the house, I couldn't help but wonder if things would ever be the same again. The hours after Serenity's departure felt like a lifetime. I wandered aimlessly around my apartment, replaying the morning's events over and over in my mind. The look of betrayal on Serenity's face haunted me, and the guilt gnawed at my insides. I tried to distract myself, but nothing worked. I couldn't focus on a book or a TV show. My mind kept drifting back to the same question: how could I have let this happen? That evening I found myself on the couch, clutching a pillow as if it could somehow offer me comfort. My phone buzzed and I hesitated before picking it up. It was a text from Rachel. Hey, how did it go? Are you okay? I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Finally, I typed back. It was awful. She was so hurt, Rach. I don't know how to fix this. Her reply was immediate. I'm coming over. Hang tight. 15 minutes later, Rachel was at my door, her expression a mix of concern and determination. She enveloped me in a hug as soon as I let her in. Tell me everything, she said, leading me to the couch. I recounted the morning's events, my voice trembling. Rachel listened intently, nodding occasionally, her face set in a sympathetic frown. That's rough, she said when I finished, but you did the right thing by telling her. Keeping it a secret would have only made things worse. I know, I sighed. But seeing her so hurt, it was like a knife to the heart. I just want to make things right, but I don't know how. Rachel squeezed my hand. Give her time. She needs to process this. And you need to forgive yourself. You didn't know Asha was her fiancé. It was an honest mistake. An honest mistake that could ruin my relationship with my sister, I muttered. You and Serenity have a strong bond, Rachel said firmly. It won't be easy, but you can get through this. Just be there for her when she's ready to talk. I nodded, hoping she was right. But as the night wore on, the doubts and fears crept back in. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had shattered something precious, something that might never be fully repaired. Over the next few days, the silence from Serenity was deafening. Each passing hour without a word from her felt like an eternity. I replayed our last conversation in my mind, dissecting every word, every expression, trying to find some glimmer of hope that things might eventually be okay. One evening I was sitting on my bed, staring at my phone, when it buzzed with a message from Asha. Can we meet? I think we need to talk. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face him again, but I knew we needed to figure things out. I replied with a simple okay, and we agreed to meet at a small cafe near my apartment. The cafe was quiet when I arrived, the soft hum of conversation and clinking of coffee cups providing a soothing background noise. Asha was already there, sitting at a corner table, his expression tense. Hey, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Hey, he replied, offering a weak smile. Thanks for coming. We sat in awkward silence for a moment, neither of us knowing where to start. Finally, Asha took a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, he said, and I can't stop feeling guilty about how much we've hurt Serenity. I know, I said quietly. It's tearing me apart. I love her, Asha continued, his voice earnest. I want to make things right, but I also know that what we had, it was real, and that makes everything so much more complicated. I nodded, my emotions a tangled mess. I don't regret what happened between us, Asha, but I regret that it had to hurt Serenity. She means the world to me. Asha reached across the table, taking my hand in his. We'll find a way through this. We have to. For her sake. I looked into his eyes, seeing the same determination reflected in my own. You're right. We have to be honest with her, and we have to be there for her no matter how hard it is. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our shared responsibility settling over us. As we left the cafe, I felt a small spark of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to heal. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I knew the road ahead would be long and painful, but I was determined to fight for my relationship with Serenity. She was my sister, my best friend, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. In the early hours of the morning, I finally drifted off to sleep, clutching that small spark of hope like a lifeline. Tomorrow was a new day, and I would face it with all the strength and courage I could muster. I woke up early the next morning, the memories of the past few days still heavy on my mind. I decided to take a walk, hoping the fresh air would help clear my thoughts. As I walked through the quiet streets, my mind drifted back to the night I met Asha, the night that had set this whole chain of events into motion. It was a Friday evening, and I had been looking forward to unwinding after a long week. My friend Jenna had invited me to a party at her family's cabin in the woods. It sounded like the perfect escape, good music, good company, and a chance to relax. Come on, Ella. You need this, Jenna had said, her enthusiasm contagious. It'll be fun. Just a small group of us, hanging out and having a good time. I had agreed, not knowing what the night would bring. We arrived at the cabin, and the party was already in full swing. The air was filled with laughter, the smell of grilled food, and the sound of music. I felt myself start to relax, letting the stress of the week melt away. Jenna introduced me to a few of her friends, and soon I was chatting and mingling, a drink in my hand. It was then that I noticed him. Asher was standing by the fireplace, a quiet presence in the midst of the lively crowd. Our eyes met, and something clicked. "Who's that?" I asked Jenna, nodding towards Asher. "Oh, that's Asher. He's a friend of Mark's," she said, referring to her boyfriend. "He's pretty cool. You should go talk to him." I hesitated, but the curiosity was too strong. I made my way over, my heart pounding a little faster than usual. "Hi, I'm Ella," I said, offering a shy smile. "Asher," he replied, smiling back. "Nice to meet you, Ella." We started talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. We shared stories, laughed, and found a surprising number of things in common. As the night wore on, the party started to wind down, and people began to drift off to their rooms or leave. "Do you want to take a walk?" Asher asked, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "Sure," I said, feeling a thrill of excitement. We stepped outside into the cool night air, the stars twinkling above us. The forest was quiet, the only sounds the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, and then Asher turned to me, his expression serious. "I don't usually do this," he said quietly, "but there's something about you, Ella. I feel like I've known you forever." I felt the same way, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I reached out and took his hand, feeling the warmth of his touch. We stopped walking, and before I knew it, he was kissing me. It was gentle at first, but then it deepened, and I felt myself getting lost in the moment. We ended up back at the cabin, but instead of going inside, we found a quiet spot on the porch. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, the connection between us growing stronger with each passing moment. As the first light of dawn began to break, we finally went inside, finding an empty room where we could crash for a few hours. It felt natural, like we had done this 1,000 times before. I fell asleep in his arms, feeling a sense of peace and contentment I hadn't felt in a long time. The next morning, I woke up to find Asher already gone. There was a note on the pillow next to me, written in a hurried scrawl. I had to leave early. "Last night was amazing. Let's meet up soon. Asher." I smiled, tucking the note into my pocket. I had no idea that this brief encounter would lead to the complicated mess I found myself in now. As I walked through the quiet streets, the memory of that night played over and over in my mind. How could something that felt so right turn out to be so wrong? I reached the park and sat on a bench, watching the world go by as I tried to make sense of everything. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Serenity. "Can we talk?" "I think I'm ready." My heart skipped a beat, a mix of relief and anxiety flooding through me. I typed back a quick response. "Of course. Where do you want to meet?" "Come over to my place," she replied. "We need to talk this out." I took a deep breath and started walking towards Serenity's house, my mind still swirling with memories and emotions. I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, but it was a step we had to take if we were ever going to move forward. When I arrived, Serenity was waiting for me on the porch. She looked tired, her eyes red from crying, but there was a resolve in her expression that gave me hope. "Hey," I said softly, stepping up to her. "Hey," she replied, her voice shaky. "Let's go inside." We sat down in the living room, the tension between us palpable. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Serenity, I'm so sorry," I began. "I never meant for any of this to happen. If I had known who Asher was, I would have never." "I know," she interrupted, her voice breaking. "I know you didn't know, but it still hurts, Ella. It hurts so much." Tears welled up in my eyes. I know, and I hate that I've caused you this pain. You're my sister, and I love you more than anything. Serenity looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and understanding. I love you too, Ella. That's why this is so hard. I feel so betrayed, but I also know it wasn't intentional. We sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of our emotions settle. Finally, Serenity spoke again, her voice softer. I think we need time, she said. Time to heal, time to process everything. But I don't want to lose you, Ella. We can get through this, but it will take time. I nodded, relief flooding through me. I understand, and I'll give you all the time you need. Just know that I'm here for you whenever you're ready. Serenity gave me a small, sad smile. Thanks, Ella. That means a lot. We sat together for a while longer, the silence between us no longer filled with tension, but with a sense of mutual understanding. It was a start, and that was all I could hope for. As I left Serenity's house, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but we had taken the first step towards healing, and that was something worth holding on to. The next few days passed in a blur. I focused on giving Serenity the space she needed, while also dealing with my own swirling emotions. Memories of the night I met Asha kept resurfacing, and I knew I needed to confront them fully to make sense of everything. It was time to face the events of that night with more clarity. I decided to call Jenna, the friend who had invited me to that fateful party. We agreed to meet at our favorite cafe, and as soon as I walked in, Jenna waved me over, a concerned look on her face. Hey, Ella, she said, giving me a tight hug. You look like you've been through hell. What's going on? Hey, Jenna. Yeah, it's been rough, I admitted, sitting down across from her. I need to talk about that night at your family's cabin. Jenna nodded, her expression serious. Of course. What do you need to know? I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. Do you remember the guys who were there? The ones who caused trouble? Jenna's face darkened. Yeah, I remember. They were Mark's friends, and they got way too drunk and aggressive. I'm so sorry about that, Ella. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. I nodded, feeling a pang of anger and fear. Yeah, it got bad. They wouldn't leave me alone, and I had to get out of there. That's when I met Asha. Asha Jenna's eyes widened. You mean Mark's friend Asha? Yeah, turns out he's also Serenity's fiancé, said, my voice barely above a whisper. Jenna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God, Ella, that's insane. What are you going to do? I don't know, I admitted. But I need to remember everything that happened that night to make sense of it all. Jenna nodded, leaning in closer. Okay, let's start from the beginning. What do you remember? I closed my eyes, letting the memories flood back. It was late, and most people had gone to bed. Those guys wouldn't leave me alone, so I decided to leave. I walked out into the woods, trying to find the main road. The memory came back vividly. The darkness of the forest, the sound of my own footsteps crunching on the gravel, and the fear that gripped my heart. They followed me, I continued, my voice trembling. I could hear them behind me getting closer. I was terrified, Jenna. I didn't know what to do. Jenna reached across the table and took my hand. I'm so sorry, Ella. I should have been more aware of what was going on. You shouldn't have been in that situation. It's not your fault, I said, squeezing her hand. I ran. I ran as fast as I could, and that's when I saw Asha's car. I remembered the relief that had washed over me when I saw the headlights. I had waved frantically, hoping whoever was driving would stop and help me. Asha pulled over and asked if I needed help. I was so scared, Jenna. I didn't even think. I just got in the car, I said, my voice breaking. Jenna nodded, her eyes filled with sympathy. And then what happened? He drove me away from the cabin, and we talked. He was so kind, so reassuring. I felt safe with him, I said, the memory of that feeling of safety contrasting sharply with the chaos that followed. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Jenna looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and determination. "Well, I'm glad he was there for you," she said finally. "Even if things got complicated later, at least he helped you when you needed it." I nodded, feeling a sense of clarity. Yeah, he did. But now I need to figure out how to move forward. I can't change the past, but I can try to make things right with Serenity. Jenna squeezed my hand again. "You will, Ella. You're strong, and you'll get through this, and I'll be here for you every step of the way." "Thanks, Jenna," I said, feeling a wave of gratitude for her support. "I really appreciate it." After our conversation, I felt a little lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had faced the memories of that night, and while they were still painful, I felt more in control of my emotions. Later that evening, as I sat in my apartment, my phone buzzed with a message from Asha. "Can we talk?" "It's important." I hesitated for a moment before replying. "Sure. Where?" "How about the park? Near the fountain at 7. "Okay. See you there." I arrived at the park a few minutes early, the evening air cool and crisp. The fountain was softly lit, casting a gentle glow over the surrounding area. Asha was already there, pacing back and forth. "Hey," I said, walking up to him. "Hey, Ella," he replied, stopping to face me. "Thanks for meeting me." "No problem," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's up?" Asha took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us, about Serenity, and I think we need to come clean to her, fully. No more half-truths, no more hiding." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. I agree. She deserves to know everything. "We need to tell her about that night, how we met, everything that happened," Asha continued. "It's the only way to move forward, to try to make things right." I looked at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "You're right, we owe her the truth. She needs to hear it from both of us." Asha nodded, his expression determined. "Let's do it then. Together." We walked back to Serenity's house, our resolve strengthening with each step. This was going to be one of the hardest conversations of our lives, but it was necessary. When we arrived, Serenity was sitting on the porch, looking out at the stars. She turned as we approached, her expression wary but resigned. "Hey," she said softly, "you two need to talk to me." "Yes," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "We need to tell you everything, Serenity. No more secrets." We sat down, and Asha and I took turns recounting the events of that night, from the moment I decided to leave the cabin to the moment Asha found me on the road. Serenity listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When we finished, there was a long pause. Finally, Serenity spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for telling me the truth," she said quietly. "It's a lot to take in, but I needed to hear it." "We're so sorry, Serenity," I said, my eyes filling with tears. "We never meant for any of this to happen." "I know," she replied, her voice soft. "I just need some time to process everything." "We understand," Asha said, reaching out to take her hand. "Take all the time you need." Serenity nodded, squeezing his hand briefly before standing up. "I'm going to bed. We can talk more tomorrow." As she walked into the house, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. We had taken the first step towards healing, but there was still a long road ahead. Asha and I stood there for a moment, the cool night air wrapping around us. "We did the right thing," Asha said finally. "It's a start." "Yeah," I agreed, feeling a glimmer of hope. "It is." As I walked home that night, I felt a sense of peace. It wouldn't be easy, but we were on the path to healing, and that was something worth holding on to. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of cautious optimism. We had started the process of healing, and though it was going to be a long road, I felt ready to face it. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed with a message from Asha. Can we meet? There's something else I need to talk to you about. My heart skipped a beat. What else could there be? I typed back a quick reply. Sure. Where? Same cafe as before, at noon. Okay. See you there. I spent the next few hours in a state of nervous anticipation. When noon finally arrived, I walked to the cafe, my mind racing with possibilities. Asher was already there, looking tense. He stood up as I approached, his expression serious. Hey, Ella, he said, pulling out a chair for me. Thanks for coming. Of course, I replied, sitting down. What's going on? Asher took a deep breath, his eyes meeting mine. There's something you need to know about that night. Something I didn't tell you. I felt a chill run down my spine. What is it, Asher? Do you remember when I picked you up on the road, he asked, leaning forward. Yeah, I said, my mind flashing back to that moment. You seemed like my savior that night. Asher nodded. I was driving away from the cabin because of those guys, Mark's friends. They had gotten out of hand and I didn't feel comfortable staying. I saw you running and I knew something was wrong. He paused, looking down at his hands. But there's more. When I pulled over, I noticed you weren't just running. You were being chased. I felt my heart rate spike. Chased? By who? By those same guys, Asher said, his voice low. I recognized them from the party. They were drunk and aggressive. I wanted to make sure you were safe, so I got you in the car as quickly as I could. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Why didn't you tell me this before? I didn't want to scare you more than you already were, he explained. And I thought that night was behind us, until everything came crashing down with Serenity. But now I think you deserve to know the full truth. I took a deep breath, processing his words. So, they were following me. What happened to them? As soon as we drove off, I called Mark and told him what happened. He dealt with them, made sure they left you alone, Asher said, his expression darkening. I didn't want you to worry about it. Thank you for telling me, I said, my voice shaking slightly. It's a lot to take in, but I appreciate your honesty. Asher reached out and took my hand. I'm sorry for keeping this from you, Ella. I just wanted to protect you. I understand, I replied, squeezing his hand. But from now on, no more secrets. We need to be honest with each other if we're going to get through this. Agreed, he said, nodding. No more secrets. We sat in silence for a few moments, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. I felt a mix of relief and fear. Knowing the full truth was a step towards healing, but it also opened up new questions and concerns. As we left the cafe, Asher walked me to my car. There's one more thing, he said, his tone hesitant. What is it? I asked, my nerves on edge. I think those guys might still be around, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I've seen them a few times near my office. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but it feels off. A chill ran down my spine. What do we do? I think we need to be careful, Asher said, his eyes serious, and maybe talk to Mark. He might know more about what's going on. I nodded, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. Okay. Let's talk to him. Asher gave me a reassuring smile. We'll figure this out, Ella. Together. As I drove home, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The revelation that those men were still around filled me with dread, but I also felt a strange sense of determination. We had faced so much already, and we would face this too. Later that evening, Asher and I met up with Mark at a quiet bar. Mark looked surprised to see both of us, but he welcomed us warmly. Hey, you two, he said, motioning for us to sit. What's going on? Asher mentioned seeing some of your friends around his office, I began, my voice steady. The ones from the party. Mark's expression darkened. Those guys? Yeah, they've been acting weird lately. I thought they had moved on, but it seems like they're still causing trouble. Do you know why they might be hanging around? Asher asked, his tone serious. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. They're bad news, always have been. They like to push boundaries and see what they can get away with. If they're hanging around, it's probably not a good sign. I felt a surge of fear but tried to stay calm. What should we do? I'll talk to them, Mark said firmly. Make sure they know to back off. And if they don't, I'll involve the authorities. You two shouldn't have to deal with this. Thanks, Mark, Asher said, his relief evident. We appreciate it. No problem, Mark replied, his expression softening. Just stay safe, both of you. As we left the bar, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. We had allies, and we were taking steps to protect ourselves. It wouldn't be easy, but we were facing the challenges head-on. Back at my apartment, Asher walked me to my door. Are you okay? He asked, his concern evident. Yeah, I said, nodding. I feel better knowing we're doing something about it. Me too, he said, giving me a small smile. We'll get through this, Ella. Together. As he left, I felt a renewed sense of determination. We had faced so much already, and there were still challenges ahead, but I was ready. With Asher and Serenity by my side, I knew we could overcome anything. The mysterious encounter had brought new fears, but also new strength. And with that strength, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity and emotions. Serenity had been distant since our last conversation, and I knew she needed time to process everything. Meanwhile, Asher and I continued to watch our surroundings closely, staying vigilant for any signs of trouble from Mark's friends. One evening, Serenity called me unexpectedly. Ella, can we talk? I need to see you, she said, her voice soft but resolute. Of course, I replied, feeling a mix of anxiety and hope. I'll be right over. When I arrived at Serenity's house, she greeted me with a small, tired smile. Come in, she said, leading me to the living room. We sat down and I could see the strain in her eyes, but also a glimmer of determination. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Serenity began, her voice steady. About everything. About you, Asher, and what happened. I nodded, giving her my full attention. I know this has been incredibly hard for you. I'm so sorry for all the pain I've caused. Serenity sighed, looking down at her hands. It's been a lot to process. But I know you and Asher didn't intend to hurt me. I believe you when you say you didn't know who he was. Thank you, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. That means more than you know. I love you, Ella, Serenity continued, her eyes meeting mine. You're my sister, and nothing will ever change that. But we need to rebuild the trust between us. It won't be easy, and it will take time. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I understand. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I just want to make things right. Serenity reached out and took my hand. We will. Together. As we sat there, holding hands, I felt a sense of relief and hope. It was the beginning of a long healing process, but we were committed to it. Later that evening, Asher and I met up with Mark again to discuss the situation with his friends. Mark had talked to them, but he still had concerns about their behavior. We need to be cautious, Mark said, his expression serious. They're unpredictable, and I don't trust them. We'll be careful, Asher replied. Thanks for keeping an eye out. After our meeting, Asher and I walked to my apartment, the weight of the situation hanging over us. I hate that this is happening, I said, frustration and fear bubbling up inside me. I just want everything to go back to normal. I know, Asher said, wrapping his arm around me. But we'll get through this. We just need to stay strong. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind raced with thoughts of everything that had happened. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, that we were on the cusp of a resolution. The next morning, I woke up to a loud knock on my door. My heart raced as I opened it to find Serenity standing there, her expression urgent. What's wrong? I asked, my anxiety spiking. It's Mark, she said, her voice shaking. He called me. He needs our help. Asher and I rushed to Mark's house, where we found him visibly shaken. Those guys. They showed up at my place last night, he said, his voice tense. They're looking for trouble. We need to go to the police, Asher said firmly. This has gone too far. Mark nodded, looking defeated. You're right. I can't handle this on my own anymore. We drove to the police station together, and Mark filed a report. The officers took it seriously, promising to keep an eye out and take action if necessary. As we left the station, I felt a mix of fear and relief. We had taken a significant step towards resolving the situation. A few days later, I received a call from the police. They had detained Mark's friends and were investigating their behavior. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Asher, Serenity, and I met up to celebrate the news. There was still a lot to work through, but this victory gave us hope. I'm so glad this is finally getting sorted out, Serenity said, smiling for the first time in days. Me too, I said, feeling a sense of peace. It's been a long journey, but we're getting there. Asher nodded, his expression thoughtful. We've faced a lot, but it's made us stronger. We can handle anything together. In the following weeks, we focused on rebuilding our lives. Serenity and I spent more time together, working on mending our relationship. Asher and I continued to support each other, facing challenges head-on. One evening, as the three of us sat on Serenity's porch, watching the sunset, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. We had been through so much, but we had come out the other side stronger and more united. I love you both, I said, my voice filled with emotion. Thank you for standing by me. We love you too, Ella Serenity replied, squeezing my hand. We're family, and we'll always be there for each other. Asher nodded, wrapping his arm around me. Together, we can face anything. The past few months had tested us in ways we could never have imagined, but we had emerged with a renewed sense of strength and resilience. It was a journey of pain, healing, and growth, but it had brought us closer together. In the end, we had learned that the bonds of love and family were stronger than any challenge we faced. And with that knowledge, we felt ready to face whatever the future held, knowing we would always have each other. As time passed, Serenity, Asher, and I continued to rebuild our lives, stronger and more connected than ever. The challenges we had faced taught us the value of honesty, trust, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Serenity found peace in knowing the truth, and our relationship flourished as we supported each other through the healing process. Asher and I grew closer, our shared experiences forging a bond that would stand the test of time. Through it all, we learned that even in the face of betrayal and emotional turmoil, the power of love and family could guide us through the darkest moments. Our journey was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the importance of standing together. In the end, we emerged not just as survivors but as stronger, more resilient individuals. And with that strength, we faced the future with hope and determination, ready to embrace whatever came our way. Together, we had found our way through the storm, and now we stood in the light, united by the unbreakable bonds of love and family. Let us know in the comments how this story has inspired you, or share your own experiences of overcoming adversity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories like this one. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest uploads. Your journey through the complexities of the human heart starts now. Remember, your story isn't over yet. It's just a new chapter beginning. Stay strong, stay inspired.